Let's talk about HTML headings. So HTML headings are like titles or subtitles for different sections of your web page. They help organize your content and give readers a sense of hierarchy and structure. There are 6 types of headings in HTML and they all use similar tag names of letter H and a number from 1 down to 6. It is a regular tag, so it requires both the opening part of the tag and the closing part of the tag. Everything that goes between the opening and the closing parts is the tag content, and that's exactly what's going to be rendered on the actual web page. The number in the tag name represents the context level of the heading. For example, the heading 1 is called the page heading or the main heading on the page. It has the greatest font size by default and contains a title that describes what the current page is about or the primary topic of the page. Heading 2 typically represents a main section heading. To get a better understanding, imagine the HTML documentation book in the HTML page layout. So the book has the name of HTML documentation. It has 3 chapters of introduction, HTML elements, and HTML content types, and the second section of the book, which is HTML elements, has 3 subsections: paragraphs, headings, and lists. So which HTML heading element should be used for each of these headings? The book name of HTML documentation represents the primary topic of the page, so we should use heading 1 for this title. The introduction, HTML elements, and HTML content types represent the main sections of the book or the chapters, so we should use heading 2 to add those elements to the page. The paragraphs, headings, and lists represent the subsections of the HTML elements section, so we should use heading 3 element to add those titles to the page. If our paragraphs subsection had more sections inside, we would use the heading 4 element and so on. But typically, the heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3 are more than enough to have a well-structured page. There are a couple of rules you should follow when working with the HTML headings. The rule number 1 is that the HTML document is expected to have only a single heading 1 element, since the book can have only one name and the page can be described with only a single primary topic. You should still utilize as many heading 2, heading 3 down to heading 6 elements as the web page structure requires, but typically you just need the heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3 to have a well-structured web page. And the second rule is that you should not start utilizing heading 2 elements in case the page has no heading 1 element. You should not utilizing heading 3 elements if the page doesn't contain any heading 2 elements, and so on. Let's now go and create some actual headings in our code editor. And I want to create a heading of each type, and as you remember, all the content we want to be displayed on the page should be inside of the opening and closing body tags. So I'm going to create the heading 1 element with the content of page title. Then I want to create the heading 2 element with the content of section title. Then goes the heading 3 element with the content of subsection title. Then goes the heading 4 element with the content of heading level 4. Then heading 5 element with the content of heading level 5. And the last one is the heading 6 element with the content of heading level 6. Let's now save the file to see the rendered version of the headings we have just created. The headings in HTML do not have any required or important attributes or tag-specific attributes, but they support all the global attributes, so we can add the ID to the heading 1 with the value of main heading. We can add the class of, let's say, heading, and we can add this class to any other heading of any other level in our document. So we can add it to the heading of 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and we can add the ID to the heading 4 with the value of small heading, for example. Let's now save the file and inspect our headings to make sure that the rendered version of the page matches the code we have written. So I'm going to make a right click on any of the headings and I will click inspect, which will pull up the elements inspector for me. And as you can see, the content of the rendered body matches the code we have written. Something I also want to mention is that the heading of any type is the block level element, which means that it will always try to take 100% of width of their parent. The parent of all the headings we have created here is the body tag. If I hover the body in the elements inspector, it will show me the hint saying that the width of the body is 660 pixels. And then if I hover any of the headings, we will see that each of the headings has the same width of 660 pixels. Now let's explore the documentation page of the heading tag. To find the page, I'm gonna open the Google search page and type heading 1 space MDN to find the Mozilla Developer Network documentation page. And the first link here says that this page describes the heading 1 down to heading 6 HTML elements. Let's click the link. In the documentation page, you will find the basic description of the heading tag, some simple usage examples, and then the technical summary table that actually tells us that the heading tag is of flow content type and its permitted content is the phrasing content. To find all the items that belong to the phrasing content, we need to search for a different documentation page, and I'm going to pull up the Google search page again and type content categories space MDN to find the Mozilla Developer Network link. And this page describes the content categories. Let's click it and scroll down to the phrasing content section right here. That will actually show us the list of all the HTML elements that belong to the phrasing content. Also, it says that the plain text is also the phrasing content. It's exactly what we have used for our headings here. This is the plain text. Then it also says that some elements, if the condition on the right is met, can be children of the heading tags of any level. Let's now check what actually happens if at some point we have used an invalid child for the heading tag. To do that, I'm going to remove all the secondary headings and leave just the heading 1. We probably don't need the ID and the class, so let's remove those. And as far as you remember, the permitted content of the heading tag is the phrasing content. So if we use the paragraph tag, which is of flow content type, it should show us some error saying that the HTML is not valid. Let's add the paragraph. So I'm gonna say the P, and then I will add like some text here. Okay, let's save this and let's take a look at the rendered page. So as you can see, it renders the text correctly. The formatting tool is happy with everything, so it doesn't say us that there is some issue here, but we know for sure that the documentation cannot lie. In this case, we can use the validator HTML tool, and to find one, let's open the Google search page and type W3C space validator, which will give us the link to the W3C markup validation service. Let's click this link, let's click validate by direct input, and let's copy the HTML and paste into this text area and click the check button. So as you can see, it shows us 3 issues. And I would take these green issues as just the information you can skip and you don't have to fix it. But the warnings and the errors is something critical and that should be fixed. And it says that the element P not allowed as the child of H1 in this context. So basically there is an error, but the VS Code didn't tell us about any errors, right? So how we can make our VS Code handle those errors for us? We can actually use some helpers that are called linters, and we can install the linter extension that is called the W3C space web. Let it find some. So it's the W3C web validator with this check mark as the icon. So let's click this extension. It's not super popular, but it's super helpful. And let's click the install button. Once the extension is installed, you will see this W3C validation button in the status bar of VS Code. So if I click it now, it will actually do the validation and tell me that the element P not allowed as the child of the element H1. let's create another heading of the H2 type, and let's say some other heading here. Oh, actually we can add the unordered list inside, for example. So I will add the unordered list with the single list item, saying some item inside. So now if I click the W3C validation button again, it will now yell at me saying that the element UL is not allowed as a child of the element heading 2 in this context too, because the UL is the of type flow content 2 as well as the paragraph, but while the heading permitted content is the phrasal content. So if I create another heading 2 with the anchor tag inside, or a link, saying the link, and save the file and click the W3C validation, it doesn't yell at this heading 2 because it has the valid child inside. To clear all the results of the validation, we just need to click this clear W3C validation thing, and it will remove all the errors so that they are not annoying.